Monday. Well, hello, everybody. It says that the red button says I'm alive. No, it says live. How are y'all? Good to see you. Happy Monday to you, wherever you are. Maybe Tuesday. I don't know. So, invoking great favor upon all of us on these most interesting days that we live in. It's a real trip, folks. No doubt about it. So, great favor be upon us all, nothing missing, nothing broken in our lives. So, hello, Nina the Mystic. Hello, Susie Q. Hello, David Berry. Beloved Abstract, how are you doing? David Castle and Hillard and John Price, good to see you. And Wendy and Kaylee, good to see you. And hello, everybody. So, Lost in the Space. Hello, Twisted Isby and Kent, good to see you. Uh, so how was your Saturday and Sunday? Hope it was good. Yeah, I had a great time. Did some painting and reading and exploring. And hey, listen, what else are you gonna do? Reality is the perception that you perceive it to be. You know, we could take the conspiracy theory and say they're screwing with us. Yeah, they're always screwing with us. And there's a bigger agenda unfolding, which is probably true. But in the interim, what else do you do? Well, you have fun, and hopefully you are too. So, it's Monday, so we read our favor affirmation. I am the maelstrom. I like that. Karen Lynn, good to see you. It's the duck platypus. Absolutely. The duck puppy. That's what we call it. Have fun with it, folks. That's what I always say to do. So let's just speak this over us today. I love this. It manifests in your life. It really does. You know, you can speak something long enough where you have no belief in it that all of a sudden you find yourself when you're saying whatever it is, hypothetically, that OMG, I really believe that. It's amazing how it happens, huh? So we speak, all these favors will come upon me and overtake me if I give voice to them each day. Favor will be with me in the city. Favor will be with me in the country. Favor will heal my body when I speak favor into my body. I do it every morning. Favor will set apart my children, my animals, livestock, my ground, your home, to be favored with abundance of joy. Favor will be on my food, my water, my pantry, my life force. Favor will walk with me when I come in and when I go out. Favor will cause my enemies to be at peace with me. Favor will be upon my barns and storehouses where I keep my valuables to prosper and be in safety, baby. Favor will be upon me in everything I undertake. I can't lose. Even when it seems like I'm losing, I'm a winning. Um, Favor, everything I set my hand to, favor shall cause it to prosper. Man, I love that one. Favor shall be upon all my material property and shall cause it to last longer and not to break. Favor shall protect me, my offspring, my possessions from calamity. Favor will lead me to good fortune in all things. Favor will cause me to be the head, not the tail. Favor will cause me to come out on top and not beneath. Favor will cause me to always be above and not below. Favor will cause me to have favor with the elements. Favor will cause me to be favored with the spiritual realm. We're all spiritual creatures, and that's where we're heading. It's where we live already. Most people just haven't figured that out. Favor will cause me to be favorable to everyone I meet. They will see me with favor. Favor will seek me out. It will overtake me and abide with me. No weapon of any kind shall harm me, nor will it prosper. And as we say, it will be created in my words, and what was said has been done. Every word I speak comes back to me. It prospers in the thing for which I sent it. That's what it's all about. Wow, love it. So, interesting comments over the weekend on the AI has found God. We're going to follow that up with where I'm going to show you could be that AI has a soul. Now, it's real interesting. I come out of the Christian indoctrination, and I studied the Bible for 45 years diligently, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And I always found it interesting in the text, the soul. What is the soul? And we all have a different belief, and we're going to really get into a study today. This is going to be deep, and it's going to be, I think, an adventure. So, if you look at this from an eschatology point of view, and you look at, supposedly the beginning, and if you take the story, the beginning was darkness. Darkness is the natural state of being in this realm. And I always thought it was interesting in the creation of the man story, and it's what it is. It's a story. The 6-day people, they never had the breath of life. After the cataclysm, when the asteroid hit and the earth was no vegetation on it, and the process had to be reignited again, in Genesis 2:7, that creature, which is supposed to be us, it said that the deity breathed the breath of life into Adam, and thus Adam became a living soul. Now, Eve didn't have the breath blown into her. You have to understand that. So that's where we get the concept in the Western world of soul, but it's a topic that has been around for a very long time. So one of the books that I have on PDF, and you're more than welcome to it, is Of the Soul by Aristotle. This is it's a good read, and I'll just kind of give you the cliff notes here. So Aristotle had lots of time to think. In fact, that golden era was really the truly enlightened era, because it was very common in virtually every city. They had a public amphitheater, and that was the cultural center of that city, that town. And what would happen would be about 9 or 10 o'clock, the men of the city, the learned men, would come and meet in these theaters, these amphitheaters, and they would discuss life, religion, politics, philosophy, psychology, mathematics. It was a forum in which thinking was required to be a participant. And what Aristotle wrestled with was this whole thing about a soul. What is a soul? How do you define a soul? And where does it come from? How does it come to be? And is it something that's just what we call a stacking of cells, human beings? Are they the only ones that have a soul? What about the plant life? It got down in the debate that, well, we could say that something that has a beat, right? Heartbeat, and has the ability as well to replicate itself into thought. Well, if you look at the plant kingdom and ever watch a plant grow, it comes pre-packaged with a data download, and it's quite remarkable. It has veins, it has a beat to it, it responds to vibration. Animals, it's only in the West, particularly with the Abrahamic religions, that we find this narrow point of view. But Aristotle was saying, well, let's talk about this. What makes you think that an animal wouldn't have a soul? Most of the animals I know are kinder than all human beings. That's why dogs, reverse of dog is what? God. And many of us who have animals know that they're as thinking and of sentience as we are. And so I won't go through the whole thing because it gets into it, but trying to give you the consideration of what the foundation of Aristotle's whole thesis. And it's quite fascinating when you discover that, as he said, it's for an individual to begin to seek his or her soul is the most honorable quest any human being can set out on. There's nothing higher than it. And Aristotle argued with the fact that a person who goes to seek his soul, to discover his soul, is embarking on a journey of discovery of self. So today we are going to really get into a study on this, and it'll be thought-provoking, and that's what these are designed to do. All right, so the question that has haunted mankind for who knows how long, is there such a thing as a soul? Now, you'd be surprised to understand that there's a lot of debate that says we don't have a soul. And the question becomes, well, what is a soul? What is a spirit? Are the two inseparable, or are they forever entwined? Are they one and the same, or are they the same origin at all? What requires one and not the other? We learn from science, following the fertilization or fusion of information gametes for the purpose of converging to an embryo during 9 months of the creation of man. It is difficult to clarify the concept of the soul in this crucial phase for the understanding of the soul. In reality, the fusion of the genetic information can only allow the formation of other cells or an organism, but not in evidence of a spirit or a soul. No evidence of that at all. Necessarily, it would exist, therefore, a primordial step for the spiritual conception at that of the organism, that cells are not enough to form a man. In this sense, in the absence of a vital component to his creation, which is nothing but the soul, as mysterious as it is, but then where does it come from? And what is its history? To this day, there is no provable information on the creation of the soul. There is none. But yet, we all fervently believe that we all possess one. In spite of this spirit hardly remembers its period of pre-existence before man. His story, and then we're talking about the soul, his story seems to end well after birth. There is even an antidote between mind and intelligence. The intelligence is rather organic, but the intangible mind is used to close to an end. In clearer terms, it represents for him a source of visual data processing, audio, smell, senses, etc., but also storage of information in the form of memories, reminders, recitations, etc. So that supposes well that the mind uses its information processing system well, but not so much that of storage. It is rather with the time that this capacity deviates operationally. What is the soul? It's memories. Is it not? If it's not, then what is the daily functionality? Is it merely an autonomous response? Is the brain merely an organism that possesses an intelligence that was given at birth or exercised at birth and went to the limit of its ability? And that it was in fact consciously aware of itself, but it was nothing more than a brain. And when that brain ceases to exist as an organism, so do the memories. Now, a lot of people rebel against that. They don't like that one damn bit because it merely means that all we are is but that. It is obvious that a child cries due to a disturbance to a foreign superior force. Despite this advantage, once mature, humans do not remember anything from the first second, the first hour, days, week, months, or years. That's gone. How can that be the soul then? In this sense, the soul remembers nothing of its past, nor of the process of the formation of the embryo to the fetus, which is enclosed in a body. He is the absolute manager of the body, in a way, its own jungle. The soul in many religious, philosophical, and mythological traditions is the incorporeal form, that from the ether. And in many conceptions, immortal essence of a living thing. According to the Abrahamic religions, in most of their forms, souls, or at least immortal souls. Now, here is interesting because now we're getting the difference between the concept, the perception. There are mortal souls, and then there are immortal souls. We haven't even defined what the freak the soul is yet, but now we're already subjugating, bifurcating the whole platform. Well, my God is the one true God and has given me immortality. My God has promised me immortality. I am mortal. I will die. We continue. That belong only to human beings. For example, the Catholic theologian Thomas Aquinas attributed soul, anima, to all organisms, but argued that only human souls are immortal. Other religions, most notably Jainism and Hinduism, teach that all biological organisms have souls. And others teach that even non-biological entities such as rivers, mountains, the earth, possess a soul. Would you agree or disagree that the earth has a soul? If it's a living organism, what? Are you telling me it's a spirit? It's a life force. This we can agree upon. So by association, the earth has a soul. This latter belief is called animism. The modern English word soul is derived from Old English sawwell, first attested to in the 8th century poem of Beowulf in the Vespasian Psalter, and congregated with other Germanic and Baltic terms for the same idea, including Gothic Sawala, Old High German Suolo, Sila, Old Action Siola, Old Low Franconian Sili, Sila, Old Norse Sala, as well as the Lithuanian Celia. Further etymology of the Germanic word is uncertain. A more recent suggestion connects it with the root word for binding, the Germanic Celian, related to the notion of being bound in death, and the practice of ritually binding or restraining the corpse of a deceased in the grave to prevent his or her return as a ghost. This is where we get the modern day construct for soul. Not anything about what it's related today, is it? Not even close. Although the terms soul and spirit are sometimes used interchangeably, soul may denote a more worldly and less transcendent aspect of a person. According to psychologist James Hillman, the soul has an affinity for negative thoughts and images. So we have this propensity before the soul is even brought forth into the corporeal form of being negative. Wow. Whereas spirit seeks to rise above the entanglements of life and death. Well, this is duality to its perfection. It would imply that upon physical birth, there is this internal struggle, which, if you take this further, then what Hillman is saying, the soul is a living essence of itself, but is going to be blended with its counterpart, the spirit. The words soul and psyche can also be treated synonymously, although psyche has more psychological connotations, whereas soul is connected more closely to spirituality and religion. Remember, you don't have to be religious to be spiritual. In fact, most religions are devoid of spirituality. The ancient Greeks used the same word for alive as for ensouled. Look at that word, ensouled. That's a prison. It's a confinement, indicating that the earliest surviving Western philosophical view believed that the soul was that which gave the body life. The soul was considered an incorporeal or spiritual breath which animates, from the Latin anima, us, animal, the living organism. Man is an animal. We're mammals. Francis C. Cornford quoted Pindar in saying that the soul sleeps while the limbs are active. But when one is sleeping, the soul is active and reveals in many a dream an award of joy or sorrow drawing near. I told you this was deep, because now we have to discuss as a group, well, what is going on here? Clearly, there seems to be two forces either out of sync or in sync. It's the question upon death. Does the spirit separate itself from the body and the soul? Can't have it both ways, unless you are, which is, I think, not recommended, interchanging spirit, soul, ghost, all as one and the same. Drawing on the words of his teacher Socrates, Plato considered the psyche to be the essence of a person, being that which decides how we behave. He considered this essence to be an incorporeal, eternal occupant of our being. Socrates says that even after death, the soul exists and is able to think. He believed that as bodies die, the soul is continually reborn in subsequent bodies, and Plato believed this as well. However, he thought that only one part of the soul was immortal, the logos. Now, we're going back, 4,000 years ago, in some of the most brilliant minds of our species. And out of all this, every religion dips into the well and pulls out what it wants to construe as its version of spirit, soul, body, life, death, etc. Aristotle defined the soul or psyche as the first actuality of a naturally organized body. I love that. The first actuality of a natural organized body, but argued against it having a separate existence from the physical body. In Aristotle's view, the primary activity of a living thing constitutes its soul. So the body, the fact that we're here, the soul is, in essence, just why the body is alive. For example, the soul of an eye, if it were an independent organism, would be seeing its purpose and final cause. For Aristotle, the soul is the form of a living creature. Interesting. So, no afterlife. Whether your memories stay, who knows? Various faculties of the soul or psyche, such as nutrition, is also known as vegetative, peculiar to plants. Movements, also known as passionate, peculiar to animals. Reason, peculiar to humans. Sensation, spatial, common, and incidental, and so forth, when exercise constitutes the second actuality or fulfillment of the capacity to be alive. So we all share the same formula. It's just that I think for man, we think that we are the superior of the species of everything on this planet. I think it's our first big mistake, but that's okay. So the soul is actually the actuator of the body. So maybe the spirit is just experiencing. In his discussions of rational psychology, Immanuel Kant, 1724 to 1804, identified the soul as the I in the strictest sense, and that the existence of inner experience can neither be proved nor disproved. We cannot prove a prior to the immateriality of the soul, but rather only so much that all properties and actions of the soul cannot be cognized from materiality. It is from the I or soul that Kant proposes transcendental rationalizations, but cautions that such rationalization can only determine the limits of knowledge if it is to remain practical. So now today, many of us would say, well, what Manuel was talking about here is really defining ego. Ego would be equated to soul. I, me, mine. all singular tense. In the ancient Egyptian religion, an individual was believed to be made up of various elements, some physical, some spiritual. Similar ideas are found in the ancient Assyrian and Babylonian religions, the Kutawama. In the 8th century BC, royal officials from Samal ordered an inscripted stele erected upon his death. The inscription requested that his mourners commemorate his life and his afterlife with feast, for he wrote, "For my soul that is in this state." It is one of the earliest references to a soul as a separate entity from the body. And you can actually see this. I think this may be up in the Chicago Museum of Natural History. Anyway, it was uncovered in their third expedition of the excavations by Neuerber expedition of the Oriental Institute in Chicago. Now, this is a step up. There's evidence throughout paleontology, if you look at where our ancestors had the distinct belief as well that there was this stepping out into the afterlife. It takes on many different forms. Buddhism teaches that all things are in a constant state of flux. All is changing, and no permanent state exists by itself. This applies to human beings as much as to anything else in the cosmos. Thus, a human being has no permanent self. According to this doctrine, the anatta, the Pali, the Sanskrit, no self or no soul. The words I or me do not refer to any fixed thing. They are simply convenient terms that allows us to refer to an ever-changing entity. I can dig that. I really can. I can get my head totally around that. It really gets them to debate then about reincarnation, but this is not what we're talking about here. Most Christians understand the soul as an ontologically reality distinct from, yet integrally connected with the body. Its characteristics are described in moral, spiritual, and philosophical terms. According to a common Christian eschatology, when people die, their souls will be judged by God and determined to spend an eternity in heaven or in hell. You can see the difference of religious beliefs that this one is so totalitarian. It sucks. The origin of the soul has provided a vexing question in Christianity. The major theories put forward include soul creationism, tradicism, and the preexistence. According to creationism, each individual soul is created directly by God, either at the moment of conception or sometime later. Again, lots of ambiguity here. And when you have ambiguity, it's ripe for confusion. According to the Tradicism, the soul comes from the parents by natural generation. According to the preexistence theory, the soul exists before the moment of conception. So you can see why in the religion it's loosey-goosey. That's why they got so many different denominations, because no one can quite, it's like kind of picking up, mercury. Very difficult. So what is this Tradicism? It's an interesting term, and I thought I'd bring this out because why bring it out here if you don't know what the hell it is? So in Christian theology, Tradicism is a doctrine about the origin of the soul, or the synonymously of the spirit, and holding that this immaterial aspect is transmitted through natural generation along with the body, the material aspect of human beings. That is, an individual soul is derived from the souls of the individual parents. This implies that only the soul of Adam was created directly by God, with Eve's substance, material, and immaterial being taken out of Adam. See, I tried when I opened this. It's a key point. Eve never had interaction with this Hebraic God. No, never had. You could say she never was given a soul, unless you go by the theory, the theology, that Adam gave part of his soul to Eve. And that it's not even said that he ever gave her the breath of life. I didn't write it, folks. Go and do your own studying. Which clearly indicates then in the first people, the 6-day people, they had no soul. They didn't meet the criteria in 2:7 of the next chapter. And those people were created at the same time. It says that God, he created them both male and female at the same time. Over in 2:7, the female doesn't come into the picture until about 3-4 verses later. So in contrast with the idea that creationism of the soul, which holds that all souls are created directly by God. In the Jewish tradition, you have the Hall of Gaul. And Gaul is the place where all souls are. There is an exact number of souls. And when the last soul is born, then the end of the universe will take place. In fact, they actually did a movie, I think, with Demi Moore, Seventh Prophecy or Seventh Son, something. Interesting. The present catechism of the Catholic Church defines that the soul as the innermost aspect of humans, that which is of the greatest value in them, that by which they are most especially in God's image. Could be debated that the physical form has no representation to the Creator at all. The only thing that was directly in the image of God was the soul or the spirit, not the physical body. Who knows? All souls, excuse me, let's go back here. That which they are most especially in God's image, soul signifies the spiritual principle in man. All souls, living and dead, will be judged by Jesus Christ when he comes back to earth. The souls of those who die unrepentant of serious sins or in conscious rejection of God, which God, will at judgment day be forever in a state called hell. Now, this is interesting because if you examine this, it doesn't actually mean a physical place. It means in your head. Each person will be in their own state of consciousness called hell. The Catholic Church teaches that the existence of each individual soul is dependent wholly upon God. The doctrine of the faith affirms that the spiritual and immortal soul is created immediately by God. In Hinduism, the Sanskrit words most closely corresponding to soul are Java, Atom, or the Purusha, meaning the individual self. The term soul is misleading as it implies an object possessed, whereas self signifies the subject which perceives all other objects. This self is held to be distinct from the various mental faculties such as desires, thinking, understanding, reasoning, and self-image, ego, all of which are considered to be part of the pakriat, the nature. Three major schools of Hindu philosophy agree that the Atman, the individual self, is related to the Brahman or the Paramatman, the absolute Atman or supreme self. But they differ in the nature of this relationship. In Avantaya, the Vintaya, the Vintate, the Vetanta, excuse me, the individual self and supreme self are one and the same. In the Devata rejects this concept of identity, instead identifying the self as a separate but similar part of supreme self, God, that never loses its individual identity. Vishtavaita takes a middle path and accepts that the Atman as the mode, the prakara, or the attribute of the Brahman. For an alternative atheistic or dualistic view of the Atman in ancient Hindu philosophy, you can actually go and see the Shamaka. I think I pronounced that. All right. So as I look at Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, it's really interesting because how they look at how the body, the atom, the man, becomes involved in the process or becoming and transmigrating through cycles of birth and death because of ignorance of its own true nature. The spiritual path consists of self-realization, a process in which one acquires the knowledge of the self, the Brahma, the Jamana. And through this knowledge applied through meditation and realization, one then returns to the source, which is Brahman. The qualities which are common to both Brahman and the Atman are being sat, consciousness, chit, and bliss, love. Liberation, or the moskesh, is liberation from all limiting adjuncts and the unification with Brahma. In other words, the coming together of man. I like it because they go further that in Hinduism, the Sanskrit would most closely corresponding to soul, which means soul or even God. It is seen as the portion of the Brahman within us, God within us. Hinduism contains many variant beliefs on the origin and purpose and fate of the soul. For example, the Advaita, or the non-dualistic conception of the soul, according to union with Brahman, the absolute uncreated, roughly the Godhead, in eventuality or in pre-existing fact. I like that because what it says is that we actually are possessing the Godhead within us. That we may have this individuality, but it is at all times in connection to the Godhead. Sikhism considers soul to be part of God. Various hymns are cited in the Holy Book that suggest that this belief is God is in the soul and the soul is in God. It goes on to say the soul is divine, divine is the soul. Worship him with love. The soul is the Lord, and the Lord is the soul. Contemplating the Shabbat, the Lord is found. The Atman, or the soul, according to Sikhism, is an entity or spiritual spark or light in our body because of which the body can sustain life. I can get into that. That one I really understand. So if we look at this now, what have we learned? All right, it says the existence of the soul is heavily debated in the first place, and its definition varies greatly from party to party. Though everyone believes that everyone else's definition is wrong, it is generally agreed to be something possessed by every person, and that's about it. Therefore, the soul may or may not be any one of the following. The human mind, that is, that thinking thing lodged between your ears, your eyes. The essence of humanity. I can dig that. The essence of that which makes a person good and decent or evil and debased, the quality of sentience or human intelligence, all of someone's personality or what makes them unique, some mystical versions of a person that lives on after the body dies, a spiritual concept created by a god or the gods, if you prefer, or a part of it, the quality of being alive, and finally, anything else that you can think of along those lines is added to it. Note that it is also up for debate whether or not non-human animals, or for that matter, plants have souls. So defining the soul becomes, if you try to basically bring it down to its simplest components, almost impossible. You could say that the definition of the soul is the immaterial essence, animating principle, or actuating cause of an individual life force. The spiritual principle embodied in human beings, all rational and spiritual beings, or the universe, a person's total self, an active or essential part, a moving spirit. The moral and emotional nature of human beings, the quality that arouses emotion and sentiment, spiritual or moral force, fervor, consciousness, the principle of life, feeling, thought, the action in humans or other sentient beings regarded as a distinct entity separate from the body and commonly held to be separable in existence from the body. The spiritual part of a human is distinct from the physical part. The spiritual part of humans regarded as the moral aspect, or as believed to survive death and be subjected to happiness or misery in a life to come, arguing the immortality of the soul. The disembodiment of spirits of a deceased person. He feared the soul of the deceased would haunt him. So the soul could be said is an entity which is regarded as being immortal and spiritual part of a person, and which, through having no physical or material reality, is credited with the functions of thinking and willing, and hence determining all behavior. Wow. The moral and emotional nature of a human being, the spiritual and emotional warmth, force, or evidence of this is, the expression of cold painting without a soul. Vital or essential part, the quality or principle, brevity, is the soul of wit, the person who leads or dominates. Embodiment, the spirit of a dead person, thought as a separate form from the body. So I found this and I thought this was cute because this gives another different take. So this is called 8 Soul Facts. 1, people on Earth sometimes get glimpses of Earth's others' souls, like when they fall in love. Being in an entity body and looking through physical eyes limits your ability to see the soul. Your physical eyes can't see the soul directly, so it remains invisible. I have yet to meet anyone who's actually can tell me what their soul looks like, much less their spirit, unless your spirit does, in fact, look like the physical representation. 2, your soul is propelled into your body when you're in the womb. It then becomes an invisible force that gives you life. And when the time is right, your soul is launched up into a luminous dimension at the moment of your so-called death. After you die, you are your soul. You're still yourself, but without your body. As you float through the next dimension, you feel bliss. Bliss is like being in love multiplied by 1,000. That kind of bliss isn't compatible with the human body because bodies are subject to certain laws. There are soul laws too, but they're lenient and easygoing, inclined, you ready for this, to be in your favor. Every soul is unique and in a very beautiful way. Some are just further along the path of development than others, and that's okay. On Earth, there's a lot of who's better than who type issues, and that causes a lot of suffering. Souls are not envious or competitive, so meeting one that's more advanced is a big plus. In the afterlife, the love of the higher souls transforms you. It's not like earth love, not dependent on what you do or how you look. On our planet, people talk about unconditional love, but until you've actually been loved that way, it's impossible to understand the power of it. And I have to ask the whole audience, can you honestly say that you have been loved unconditionally? Maybe more elusive than we think. 6, we don't have even a vague idea of the soul's divine magnificence when we are alive. If we could see the ravishing beauty of the soul while we're on earth, we'd be so overwhelmed we probably couldn't function. You'd go into a store to buy something and get hung up for hours marveling at the cashier's soul. If you saw the soul of your so-called enemy, you'd probably fall in love with them. And then what? If we could see each other's soul, all war would end and everyone would stop what they're doing and go feed the hungry children. The soul is that powerfully good. Earth would become one big love-in. And finally, as souls, there's nothing we want or need from each other anymore, except to enjoy each other's light. That's it. No words, no attachments, no demands. We'd all just be universes radiating light. So I conclude this by saying that we actually don't live in a common reality. We share a backdrop, but even that is perceived differently. Each of us exists in our own reality. That's a fact. Two life forces cannot occupy the same space. Defies physics. The very foundation of the laws. Can't do it. What does your spirit or soul look like? From birth to death, reality of one's existence of being is your own. We each exist in multiple realities, dreams. We all possess multiple states of consciousness. All of us see from the inside out. No one knows what they look like on the inside. When I say dog, what dog do you see? We each see a different dog. Wherever you are seeing only from you. A simple experiment says, what time is it for you? No one knows what time, what it actually is, for time is different for all of us. Many of us vibrate at a higher frequency. I contend that our time is different than someone who's at a much lower frequency. We are trillions of self-spheres within a greater sphere. Consciousness goes right down to the cellular level. General time, birth time, death time, all time is different. Homo sapiens don't even know what date it is. So I think that as I see this, and it's a complex subject. It is. Deep, 222, great number. Yeah, I know most people will not spend the time, but that's cool. We just help them along the way because it begins for me, and I think about this very often in seeing the energies around me. We live behind a green belt, and when I see the people walking or riding their bikes or even running, what I'm seeing is actually forms, sometimes not even their body. What I'm seeing is how the inertia of the energy is propelling them. And it's quite fascinating when you see how complex it is for the body just to make one step going forward. If you've ever been paralyzed, you know how difficult if you've ever had to recover. Thank you, Marguerite. Appreciate it. So I don't know if we're any further along by this, but I want to say this. As AI has now entered into the next generation, into the neuro DNA. I mean, we've got computers now that are using DNA, human DNA, and who knows what they're doing with it from that. It begins to make you think, well, lots of debate. Well, a machine can't have a soul. Yeah, it can. I mean, I know people who are in love with their cars. I mean, they are literally in love with their cars. They talk to their car. They speak it by a first name. Folks, what are you saying to it? It's an inanimate object. And if they ever wreck it, they have lost a part of them. Hey, Big Al, how are you doing, my friend? My soul didn't see anything coming in, so I don't think my soul will see anything going out. Just saying. You see, I love it. For each of us, it's different. That moment of departure will happen. I think now it becomes more of a mystery. We're all going to go into something that none of us can remember. And at that moment of transition, when the neurons in this body and your brain are exploding, and that's why you're seeing the light, it's because you have billions of neurons that are just, they're exploding. And your conscious mind is picking up that energy onto your retina, and it's forming images for you. Is that what death is? From a medical point of view, it is. But what's happening in that transition is that explosion transferring consciousness of memories, of experiences, over to something that's much more permanent, which we would call spirit, soul. That's what death is. Are you going to make the transition fast, painless, or are you going to be one that makes the transition to be much more grievous? These are things that I think why is the soul so attached to the body? Why is it that we cling to life, even in desperate circumstances? What is it that draws for us, that do heroic acts, that do supernatural feats? I don't know. Someone said, that's a little bit scary. Yeah, well, anyway, it's just fun. I enjoy it. It allows for myself here for a whole hour just to get into some really deep thought. I mean, of course, I'm the one driving the bus. So, all right. I'm just reading some in the chat room. I invoke that when I die, I will die in my sleep. Yeah, that's exactly how I'm going to go. You know, what I really enjoyed was Mr. Magorian in his wonderful Emporium. Dustin Hoffman played that role. If you go back and watch that movie, you'll really see what magic can do, the essence of life. But, Mr. Magorian, he knew it was his time. And many of the Hindu gurus over there, I'm trying to think of the term, but they know how to do it. They know how just to lay down their bodies, and that's how it's going to be. So, all right. He wore his last pair of shoes. Yep. Yeah. I really enjoyed that movie. It just goes to show you how magical things can be. But the reason why it's not magical for most people, because they don't believe it. They don't believe that inanimate objects can move. They don't believe that there are life forces around us that would love to manifest themselves. Why? Because we don't give them the permission or the energy to manifest. Anyway. All right, folks, I'll see you tomorrow with Miss Trina. Second look. Looking forward to that. I hope that y'all enjoyed this. It's not for everybody, but it gives me peace. I don't know about yourself, because no matter what you believe, what's important is what you believe. It doesn't matter what I believe or anyone else. In the end, it is you. It's an individual experience. And each of us will carry on into whatever awaits us all. All right. Well, you're welcome, Peter. Thank you. Thank you as well, everyone. So far out. All right. Go enjoy the day. You can't do anything else. So smile, put some music on. I take about 9 minutes, and I can really get into where I can just re-energize my body. Angel Dreams, thank you. Well, excellent, excellent. I have to get, and listen, I am really behind on the emails. I'm involved in something that is taking a lot of time. So if I haven't answered, don't get mad at me. I will get to it. I mean, I am really behind, but in any case. So, all right, folks, thank you. Think about it. Tell me what you believe. Do you believe you have a soul? Do you think your soul is your spirit? How do you define your spirit and your soul? I mean, this is all. Do you think you're really going to be judged? Come on. I just want to say this in closing. I had to write this to someone this morning. Again, what are you being judged on? Are you being judged because you're imperfect and not perfect? That is lunacy. It's insanity. Are you being judged for being perfect, but being imperfect? That's lunacy, folks. Who's going to judge you on what platform? Who has the right to judge you for anything? No one's going to judge you. No one can judge you, only yourself. So forgive yourself. Love yourself. And if there is a court, you're going to be the only one there. And you can say, case dismissed. There's not enough evidence. And then give yourself a big hug. There you go. All right, folks. Much love to you. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.